It's time for Around the Gridiron with your co-hosts, Marissa Voss and Brock Aker.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Around the Gridiron. I am Marissa Voss, along with Brock Aker, and we've got a guest, another one, except he's a guy, and they're two Patriot fans. He is, well, with Brock, is Andrew Erickson. He is also a football, are you a fantasy football analyst for PFF, right? Correct?
Yes, that is correct. PFF, fantasy football analyst, Andrew Erickson. Here you go.
Beautiful introduction. I love it. Amazing. So, Andrew, just to get a little know about you, so the people know, what do you do for that job, or what does that kind of entail?
So basically, it's exactly what you think it is. I spend all day. It's a full-time job. So this is my, 9 to 5, quote unquote. I write about, research about fantasy football. It's exactly how it sounds. It's not a joke, and it's awesome. I started working this past May. I got the job, and it's been honestly a dream come true. Coming in and just, I get to look at numbers and, targets, all this stuff. It's tons of fun. And yeah, I was lucky enough to land at PFF, and we have such great tools on the website. Obviously, the grades are really unique to Pro Football Focus, grading the players, but so much data at my fingertips that you can basically figure out anything you want, and it's tons of fun.
Oh my gosh, Brock, that sounds like your ideal job. That's what he needs to. He's like, every time we do this podcast, if it's any like Think Fantasy, like this is my first year like doing it, and I always point to him. He's like the guru. But how did you kind of get hooked up with that? It sounds like a dream job.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it had to do with networking, and that's really what the advice I give. A lot of people ask the question, like, how do I like break into the industry? And again, it's really hard to do because it's very truncated. Everybody wants to be in it because obviously it's an ideal situation, but the thing is, you need to find ways to stand out. And what I did was, again, obviously worked hard. I, wrote for a couple smaller websites here and there for a couple of years. And then eventually I was like, I need to go to these conferences. There are a lot of, or there used to be conferences that you could actually go to, and hopefully they'll have those in the future. But basically it's called the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, FSGA. So they always put on 2 conferences every single year where you can go, whether you're associated with a company or not, and you can meet people that work in these industries, whether, Matthew Berry, like he's a person that's gone to these, and you actually introduce yourself to that person. So you're not just some person on Twitter, you're actually a face that this person remembers. And, Matthew Berry follows me on Twitter. Like, that's not because, I just, had this amazing take about something. It was because I met him in real life and he remembered me. So that's what I would tell people to do is like, once you can start to network and get back out there, make a conscious effort to try to meet these people, because the minute that something opens up, oh, I was at the top of PFF's list because I had met some of the people that I already worked there, and then a spot opened up.
Yeah, that's kind of how like we both went. Brock and I went to Bethany Lutheran College, and one of the guys there, his name is Greg Vandermoos. It's so weird to say. I always trip up on it. He used to work for ESPN Sports Center and did Monday Night Football. So he's introduced, Brock and I to a lot of different people. And one of the guys he works for the Minnesota Twins right now. And it was kind of the same deal. Like, he came to the college, he was an alum, he talked, and you kind of make an impression, you meet them, and then he's like, hey, what's Marissa doing after college? She should come work for the Twins. And at the time I already had a job lined up, so I was like, oh my gosh, dream job, but it's those kinds of things that like really make it stand out. Because like, if you would like, we're young, so Twitter is cool, right? But for like someone who's older, like you reach out on Twitter, you're like, okay, I don't know how this person works, I don't know their ethic, I don't know anything about them.
Right.
So that's really cool. Well, perfect. I love that you're on the pod, and that's actually, usually when we talk to people, we've talked to a couple other girls, and it's like side gigs. So to know that that's your like real full-time job is super cool. So
yeah, it's unbelievable for sure.
Yeah.
Totally blessed to have it, and just continues every morning. Just wake up, just like open my laptop because, I don't go anywhere anymore. We're strictly work from home, and it's awesome.
So you get to pick your own hours, or is it still 9 to 5, or how does that work?
Yeah. So basically we work in conjunction with, so we have editors and things like that. So, we have deadlines on certain pieces we do, but again, if I want to instead work earlier, it's all about matter of is your content done on time? You meet the deadline, you can kind of do it whenever you want. So if I have more time in the morning, I can, start working at 7 a.m. and work till, 3, for example. Then if I have to go take care of something, I can do it. But it's just a matter of if you're getting your work done, then it doesn't really matter as long as you, answer any type of chats you get, between like 9 and 5:30. Usually you answer your email. But again, I don't get a lot of angry emails because we all love our job, because we're covering football. So never really had any arguments with any of the employees because, we're all just enjoying the work.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's actually amazing. Well, let's see if you have some football knowledge. Let's put it to the test. We're going to kind of get a little bit into playoff talk for the first section of it because obviously we're getting into the playoffs. This is the big time. Your Pats obviously are eliminated just like my Vikings are eliminated, which is something I honestly could have seen coming because my team is very sad. Besides Justin Jefferson and a couple other key players. But let's talk who are you thinking on the bubble right now in the hunt would you say is the best to get into it, into the playoff race? Because we've got a lot of, people who are in right now, but in the hunt, on the NFC side, we've got Washington Redskins and the Rams and, the Bears and the Arizona Cardinals. And you've got the Cowboys in the mix and the Giants. Who do you think on the NFC side is the most to maybe get in for sure?
So the NFC is definitely interesting because you have the Cowboys and Giants, they're playing each other. And so one of those teams has to win and then hopes that Washington doesn't win against the Eagles. But I guess it doesn't really even matter to me because whoever wins that division is just going to get destroyed in the playoffs. I'd imagine, especially because they have a pretty strong chance of playing the Buccaneers potentially in the first round. So if you're, Tom Brady's probably licking his chops right now and getting the fact that, I get to play Dallas in the first round, a team that's potentially going to be 6-10 as a potential division leading team. So I guess I still lean with the football team just because their defense is so ferocious. I don't necessarily trust the Eagles offense to really be able to produce against them. Jalen Hurts has been electric at times, but it's still that offensive line is in shambles. And I don't know if it really matters who's at quarterback for the Washington football team because it hasn't mattered all season who the quarterback has been for the Washington football team. It's really all about their defense. And I just don't know if the Eagles are going to actually be able to put up enough points in the game to see them win. So I think that Washington makes the playoffs. I think it's a great story. Alex Smith wins comeback player of the year. So I think that'll be a great story. And then as for the Rams and Cardinals, I guess because they're basically kind of in a win and in situation, I'm going to lean towards the Rams. My man, John Wolford, was a amazing quarterback at Wake Forest, had the Konami code with his running ability. He adds a lot of rushing upside, things that Jared Goff can't offer. So Sean McVay is going to get to do some things, with some bootlegs, getting the quarterback running around a little bit more. I think he's going to create some interesting looks. And right now, the Arizona Cardinals are just a mess on offense, even with Murray. Murray's banged up. DeAndre Hopkins is banged up. And I just don't know if the Cardinals are going to be able to score against the Rams defense. So I'm going to lean towards Washington in the NFC and the Rams.
I think that's interesting, too, with the new quarterback for the Rams. You said, what's his last name? I can't even think of his last name.
John Wolford.
John Wolford. Okay, so, Sean Payton got a lot of credit for winning with Taysom Hill. He's like, he's an offensive mind that can win with anyone. And he rose a stock. Sean McVay, I don't know if he's had a chance to have a quarterback other than Goff in there to see how good his mind is, to see if he can make up for that. I don't think Goff is as good as Breeze. So I don't think the tailspin will be that low either. It'll be interesting to see how healthy Kyler Murray is, because that defense is for real with the Rams, like you said. I think those two games, I don't know who's going to win between those two. I think those are like a pick 'em. And the Giants and the Cowboys, who do you think is going to win in that one, though? I know the Redskins you think is going to make the playoffs because they're winning it, but who do you think will be cheering hardcore for the Eagles Sunday night?
I think it's going to be the Cowboys that win. They've been playing much better as of late. And Daniel Jones, man, I just can't buy into that guy. He's a turnover machine. I just can't do it. He just can't take care of the football. Their offense is just atrocious with Jason Garrett calling plays. They can't move the ball. They can't run the football. They can't throw it. And Dallas's defense, to their credit, has been playing a lot better over the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to give it to Dallas. The Dallas faithful is going to be, truth and hard to root for Eagles, which is basically never been happened ever in history, where Cowboys fans are going to be rooting for the Eagles to win a game, but that's going to transpire. And then in total Eagles fashion, the Eagles are going to blow it for the Cowboys, and Washington's going to go to the playoffs.
Good thing Steph didn't come on the show this week. I don't think she'd be liking you.
Our last guest we had last week is a huge Giants fan. Oh my gosh, she was like amped up about the Giants. So no, she wouldn't like that, but I would say I would have to agree with Andrew though, because as bad as my team is, as bad as your guys' teams, you can't get behind a team like that. Giants are in a division, and the whole NFC East is just garbage. To have a team that's 6-10 or that record and that caliber be in the playoff talk when there's so many other teams that are better that aren't, is just kind of like the way the cards are thrown this year, and describes 2020 to a T. But it's just like they're just not good. They're not good. It's kind of like pick which one. It's a Spider-Man meme, all pointing at each other and looking like which one's the worst kind of the deal. So I would say I'd have to agree with Andrew definitely on that. I don't trust Daniel Jones in the slightest. So we talked a lot about NFC. We got to go now to the AFC. And this one is the complete opposite of kind of the NFC East and all of that. AFC, you've got a lot of good teams on here, from the Chiefs to the Bills to the Steelers to the Titans to even the Miami Dolphins. I mean, Fitzpatrick is looking beautiful. His no-look pass, he got credit from Patrick Mahomes last week. And I think, this is going to be a really hard one to decipher. What are your thoughts, Andrew and Brock?
So I guess I'll start. I think for the AFC teams, it's interesting because you have a chance to see an 11-5 Colts team not make the playoffs if basically every other team wins. If all the teams that should win to get in all win, then it's going to be the Colts that are left out in the dust with an 11-5 record, which ironically is the same record that the Patriots had the last time they didn't make the playoffs at 11-5. So don't feel bad for the Colts. It happens. You're the odd man out. But what I will say about the Colts in specific will be, they should win. They're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, so I expect them to take care of business. The Miami Dolphins are playing the Bills, and right now, Sean McDermott has been kind of hush-hush about whether or not the starters are going to play in this game. But considering the Steelers have already come out and said that they're going to bench their players, Ben Roethlisberger is not going to play. Mason Rudolph is a train wreck of a quarterback. The last time he played the Browns, he threw 4 picks, got sacked 4 times, and then the whole Myles Garrett thing kind of transpired. So I have no concerns about the Browns going into Pittsburgh and winning that game. I think they're going to get some offensive linemen back. I think they're going to be able to overpower the Steelers defense that, has not been that elite unit that they were at the start of the year. They've had so many injuries across the board, from Devin, their linebacker, to Bud Dupree a little bit later. They just had so many injuries. So I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to stop the Browns on the ground with Nick Chubb, especially if they get Wyatt Teller back at guard. So I like the Browns in that spot. Titans, the Texans, they can't stop. The Texans defense made Brandon Allen look like a superstar last week. He was pressured on just 8% of his dropbacks. So you can put anybody back there throwing passes, and if they're never pressured, it doesn't matter who you are. You can make throws. Brandon Allen is a NFL quarterback. If you give him 5 minutes to throw the ball, he's going to hit an open receiver, especially against the Texans secondary, who can't cover anybody. So the Titans, I expect to win. So yeah, I think it's ultimately going to be, everyone's going to end up probably winning their games, and the Colts are just going to be left kind of twiddling their thumbs, being like, oh man, we were in 11-5, but it just wasn't good enough. It's too bad we didn't play in the NFC East.
That's going to be the interesting thing, is the loser is going to be 10 wins, and they're going to see a team like Washington or the Giants make it in the NFC. That's just got to be gut-wrenching. I think the Bills are going to be playing, though. I think that their starters are going to play all the way, especially now with the Steelers, if they lose, they're 3 losses, so they need to still win. I can see what you mean, because since the Steelers, if they just give up, the Bills can give up too, and they get that tiebreaker.
Yep.
I just feel like the Bills have so much momentum though going right now. I don't know if they want to bench that. I think they're gonna beat the Dolphins, so I think the Colts will sneak in there, and I think the Dolphins will not make it, go 10-6 and be the odd one out. But I think what Vegas has the Bills favored as a 1 point right now. So even Vegas doesn't know. I think this is the biggest week 17 we've ever had the past few years for sure. I play fantasy football in one of my leagues on week 17. So week 17 is always interesting for me. But for all the people that are smart and don't play week 17, there's still a good reason to watch football today because almost every game means something.
Yeah, and I think interesting point about the 1 point favorite line for the Bills. It also it opened way. It was a larger open. It opened, I think, at like 4.5 points. The Bills were favored at home, which makes sense. You know, they're a Super Bowl caliber team, and the Dolphins are a fringe playoff team. And then basically what happened was Sean McDermott had that, you know, quote unquote meeting with his coaches, and all of a sudden the lines makers move it to 1. So to me, that tells me at least that, hey, some of these line makers have some insider information about these teams. And I think that that's kind of telling me at least that they know that Josh Allen probably isn't going to play this full game, which is why they've lowered the lines and more action is coming in on the Dolphins because people are not going to assume that the Bills are going to play. I mean, it makes sense because they're going to look at the scoreboard and they could see the Steelers losing by double-digit points. I mean, Mason Rudolph, I mean, is just, if it was a different quarterback, maybe I could get behind it, but I can't imagine the Bills are going to be, you know, going into the half and seeing, oh, well, the Steelers are losing by 14 points. You know, we're just going to, you know, we don't need to play Josh Allen in this game, especially because they're also banged up right now. Cole Beasley's hurt, so he's not even going to play in this game. John Brown has been hurt all year, and there's no way you can risk like anything happening to Stephon Diggs, who's just been absolutely insanely good this year.
So then I guess it goes down to, I don't think there's much difference, but if you're the Bills, who would you rather play then, the Browns or the Colts? Because I guess that's what, if they win, then they would be playing the Colts. If they lose to the Dolphins, then they'd be playing the Browns. Do you think they really care between those two?
Well, I think it's not as much about that particular matchup. I think it's more about if they win out and the Steelers win out, then they get to play the Chiefs last. So they rather play the Chiefs after the Chiefs have to play Pittsburgh, as opposed to, okay, now we have to play the Chiefs in the divisional round and then potentially play Pittsburgh again. So I think that's what the key to the number 2 seed is. You just don't have to play the Chiefs first after a bye week, which, as we all know, Andy Reid is notoriously just amazing after bye weeks. So I think that an extra week of prep would actually be beneficial to the Bills. I think the Bills definitely want to get the number 2 seed. So I definitely agree with you that I think it's smart that McDermott isn't coming out and just announcing, oh, everyone is going to be benched, we're not starting anybody, because I think that ultimately the ideal goal is to have the number 2 seed. But I think that the Steelers are in a situation where, you know, because they had their bye week, you know, all screwed up this year, that they're just kind of like, it's not worth it for us to try to chase this, especially against the Browns, who, again, you present a much more legitimate threat, in my opinion, right now than the Dolphins do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the Steelers might be playing this outright if they didn't have that bye week screw up. I think they definitely need that, because also against the Ravens on that Thursday night, they thought they were going to play. So they didn't play for like 10 days again, but they really practiced all that week and then the next week. So when they're thinking they're going to have a 10-day window for sure after that Thanksgiving night game, they didn't have that, and that screwed them up too. They kind of been really screwed by the schedule. I think that's a great point by you. The last one before the playoffs situation, in my league, I need to win. I'm in second place. I could go up to first place here after this week in my league. It's a touchdown league. I have Tom Brady against the Falcons, or I have one move left I can make, and I could pick up Mitchell Trubisky, who I know will play the full game. Like you said, the Bucs are going to play the full. You think they're going to want to win that game to get play the NFC East? But do you think they could go up right away and then maybe sit Brady? Who would you start between Tom Brady or Trubisky? Who gets the most touchdowns this week?
That's interesting. I think I'd still probably lean towards Brady, just because I think he's more, even Brady and a half against the Falcons, I think can probably put up at least 2 touchdowns. The one thing that, I mean, Bruce Arians has come out and said that, yeah, you're going to start the starters, you know, whatever. But I'm old enough. I've been in this industry long enough to know that Bruce Arians talks a lot of crap that doesn't always translate. I've heard him say a lot of different things. I've heard him say, we're going to make Andre Ellington a featured back. We're going to feature David Johnson. We're going to feature Chris Johnson. Ronald Jones is going to be the lead guy. I've heard all this crap from him for so many years. And look, what he said about that is totally different from something he said earlier before. That was the thing that was blasted up on Roto World, that quote from Bruce Arians about the starters. But just before then, he was quoted saying about Mike Evans that they wanted to take Mike Evans out of the game last week, right after before because they wanted him to break that record. Basically, Mike Evans is trying to become the first player ever to start his career with 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. So right now he has 6. He's tied with Randy Moss and he needs 40 yards to get it. So in that last game, that's why Tom Brady was just like targeting Mike Evans like all over the place. And when Blaine Gabbert came in, it was the same thing, just targeting Mike Evans like nonstop. So I think in this game, they're going to try to get Mike Evans his 40 yards and then get him out, because that's what Bruce Arians said. He's like, yeah, we wanted to get Mike Evans out. We wanted to get Mike Evans that record in last week's game so that he wouldn't have to play in this particular game. So definitely lukewarm on the Buccaneers going all out in this spot, even though they get to play the NFC East, which again makes a lot of sense. But, keeping Brady upright and keeping everybody healthy is more important, especially because they've had a lot of injuries with the receiver position. But that being said, Trubisky might only have 2 touchdowns in him. And you know what? I'm going to go with Trubisky because I really like Allen Robinson this week. So I'm going to just tell it full reversal. I've kind of, gone through the process. I think it's going to be a big Allen Robinson week, and conversely, or naturally, that means it's got to be a big Mitchell Trubisky week. So I'm going to lean towards Trubisky. You
that's what I've been
you were like, I'm going. And then you're like, just kidding. Psych.
Well, I mean, that's the cycle of the fantasy analyst. You got to like talk through both sides of it. And, sometimes, I usually do this all in my head, but now that I have you guys to talk to, which is awesome, again, work from home life, don't get a lot of human interaction anymore. So yeah, I think Trubisky, offers the most upside. And again, it should be a potentially high scoring game with the Green Bay Packers. The Bears are going to have to try to keep pace.
Yeah, I think I messed up because that league, I have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and everything, but I can't play them this week. So that's why I had Brady as my backup. I guess people don't really care about my fantasy situation, but I was just going to bring that up because I need a win this week. And I've kind of, in that league, I've been making stupid decisions. Last week, I played Giovanni Bernard over Jonathan Taylor. And in a PPR league, that would have been okay. But Taylor scored twice last week, which pissed me off against the Steelers. But I don't know. I'll digress. What's up? What's next, Marissa?
What's going on? No, it's honestly what we were talking about, guys. It was fantasy. Andrew, you work and you do fantasy. Did you have a couple fantasy leagues of your own that you were in?
Yeah, so I do tons of fantasy. I probably do too many leagues because I can't keep track of how many I'm in. Didn't come away with any championships this year because obviously too focused on my own content and trying to help other people. So my own fantasy leagues suffer because of that. I did come in 3rd place in a couple leagues, so got my buy-ins back, so that's always okay. Yeah, just not enough. Too much Cam Newton, I would say. It looked good at the start, but if I just taken Aaron Rodgers instead of Cam Newton and all the 10th, 11th rounds of drafts, I probably would have won a lot more fantasy titles this year. But like Brock said, no, I digress.
No, I mean, like I said, it was my first time really doing fantasy. I didn't, like Brock was like, I think this would be really good for the show. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I know a lot about football, but fantasy is like this whole thing that I'm good at brackets, right? I know my brackets when it comes to March Madness, but fantasy was a whole different thing. I ended up 4th, which I was the only girl, and I was kind of excited because I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. But one thing I did learn about fantasy is that it is such a gamble. It's like you start, you have Russell Wilson was my starting QB, and in the beginning it was like he was rock solid, like giving me 29 points, so racking me up the points. Then all of a sudden, the later half of the season, he didn't do anything for me, and I had Kirk Cousins on the bench, and he racked up more points for me every time. And I was like, why do I keep starting Russell? Because I have so much faith. Well, it's not how it should work, and then I would bench some guy, and he would go off. And then I would start some guy, and he wouldn't go off. And there's just like no real algorithm. But then I got 4th. Brock won in that league, which is not a surprise in the world. I knew you would. Did you win in that league?
Yeah, I had a good start. I had Alvin Kamara drop me 55, and then Mike Evans the next day get me 30. So I pretty much won it after the first 2 games. So
it was ridiculous. I was just looking. I was like, oh my god. And you're just like, sometimes I don't know why guys. I feel like there's girls that are good at fantasy, right? But I just am like baffled by the whole entire thing. I think there's just like a different algorithm. Would you say like it's a whole different kind of thing that you can go about it on? Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like there's just something like X, Y, and Z. There's something you need to do to make fantasy work for you. Like you really need to know in depth what you're doing.
I think that what you try to do is mitigate the amount of risk you're kind of taking on a week to week basis, and to know that you can't, there's only a very select few players that will always, perform well. And the only case really that comes to mind right now is Devontae Adams, who just, routinely has, 25 points, 30 points every single week. But even he, had a bad week. I believe it was 2 weeks ago. He scored like 11 fantasy points. Like those are going to happen. And you just have to kind of go with the variance and not necessarily hold grudges against players. So like you mentioned, like you would start a player, he would go off and then you would bench him and then, or like vice versa. And you think that it's because you're benching them and starting them that the reason that they do those things, but it's so removed from that because it has zero impact on, because you're thinking what every other fantasy manager is thinking, because, if I bench this guy's going to go off, but that's not really how it works. There's actually a lot of psychological going that happens in fantasy football because you're so prone to being, FOMO. You don't want to miss out on a guy's big game. But again, you're also like, I don't want to get hurt again if I start this guy. So it is very psychological. I think that what helps is that I do, at least, is I look at, projections. So really looking at, okay, if this team's going to score, X amount of points, if this quarterback's going to throw X amount of yards, if this, team's going to score these points, they have to get, distributed somehow. And if this player sees an X amount of targets per game, then this is a baseline projection that we can, expect from him. So breaking it down that way, I think helps. And also just looking at, okay, this team is projected to score a lot of touchdowns. Like they're playing a really bad team. It's worth taking the shot on a player that is playing in that game. If they catch a touchdown, okay, I'm in the clear. But if he doesn't, then okay, I took my shot. It didn't work. So I think it's good that you started it. Fantasy is a lot of fun. And again, it sucks to get burned, but when you start a guy that you have faith in and confidence in, and then he goes off, it's a really great feeling.
No, and I was in another fantasy league. One of my friends asked me, and that one we didn't have as many people. I think Brock, we had 11 people in the fantasy we were in, and the other one I had like 7. But with the other one, I'm like 10-1. Like I think I missed a game because I just was like working, and then I didn't start anyone, and it was just a mess. But that one was different because my lineup is absolutely ridiculously good because I don't have a lot of people that are going against me, so I can we get Alvin Kamara and Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and all of these different like Stephon Diggs and all of these players. But the one that obviously we were in, we were doing a whole mock draft thing, and I was like, this is a lot. And fun fact, this is gonna be funny for you. So I live in Fairmont, Minnesota. We live on a lake, 5 lakes. At the time we were doing the draft party, I thought it'd be over in like, I don't know, an hour and a half, hour maybe. So I told my buddies, I was like, hey, he's like, you want to go wake surfing? I'm like, yeah, I'll go wake surfing. So I was drafting my fantasy while I was wake surfing. I'm not even kidding you. I was literally in and out of the boat, and they were like, what are you doing? I'm like, you got to stop the boat. I think it's my turn. I'm like, driving. I'm like, Brock, is it my turn? He's like, no, you've got X, Y, Z. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go back in the water. Then I'll get back in. Like, I felt like I didn't even know what I was in for. So next year I won't be doing that. But I definitely wake surfed while I was fantasy, which is I don't recommend. 10 out of 10 would not.
The thing I did this year that I think helped me a little more was I just picked, I think, who the best player was. I got D-Hop in a lot of my leagues, which helped because I think a lot of people were just scared because of COVID and a new situation, how much chemistry it'd have, stuff like that. And I picked Mike Evans in a lot, which helped in my touchdown leagues. Because in the last couple of years, I kind of struggled because I think a lot of experts now are saying don't do. And I'd look at their strength of schedule, and that's how I'd get screwed. Like, that's all I'd look at. If I was debating between a couple players, I just go by schedule. And really, that's a little bit, but I think it's more about who you think the better player is, because the player is always going to win. However, I kind of screwed up this year, and I didn't stand by that during some games. During the season, I sat DeAndre Hopkins when he went against the Rams. And then I'm like, shoot, he went off and got a touchdown at the end. And I lost because I sat DeAndre Hopkins, which really killed me. And then I had 2 weeks ago in my other league that was my biggest money league. I had Josh Jacobs against the Colts. or Allen Robinson against the Texans as my flex, who do I put in? I chose Josh Jacobs because I'm like, he's the better player. I got screwed for sitting Hopkins. You know, Andrew, what he did against the Colts, he got like 30 yards. Allen Robinson over 100 yards and a touchdown. I lost because of that. So what is this? There's no real science, is there, Andrew? Or like, how do you know? Do you go with the player or do you go with the schedule, or does it depend? Because I think that's what a lot of people, I think, struggle with too, is do you trust this player's skill or do you trust the matchup more?
So when it comes to drafting, I think that you definitely want to weigh more the player. So, you were correct when you talked about Hopkins as a player that you should want, because again, people were scared off the situation that caused him to fall, but realistically it didn't really matter because he finishes the number 3 wide receiver overall. From the get-go, Kyler Murray was targeting him like crazy. And yeah, I mean, Hopkins was a really great player to get. So yeah, in drafting, I think the skill definitely matters. And then when it comes to matchups, I think that you can't always pick the guy that's better, because look, we have to look at usage. We have to look at how these players deploy play. Look, I mean, if there was a reason we didn't play Frank Gore all season long, because he sucks, even though the fact he gets work, we can't assume that these coaches are just going to be rationale and be like, oh, well, we should give Ty Johnson more touches because every time he touches the ball, he's electric. No, they're going to keep giving the ball to Frank Gore. So in essence, you can't always play the player that's more talented because the coaches may or may not give that player opportunities. I think that the number one thing you can chase right now is looking at volume, because that's how you score fantasy points. Does your player touch the ball? And then after that, based on their skill, that's when they create the fantasy points, create the fantasy magic. So I look at things like high value opportunities. So I always analyze every single week. I do an article where I write about, carries inside the 5-yard line, carries inside the 10-yard line. I write about targets downfield, because not all targets are created the same. So if you receive a target, speaking to a specific player that kind of falls in this category, Juju Smith-Schuster, if you look at his targets this season, they're all really close to the line of scrimmage. That doesn't help you a lot. That doesn't generate a lot of points. It can help you in PPR leagues as kind of like a floor play, but you're not going to get any big games from Juju Smith-Schuster because he's catching the ball 5 yards downfield. Whereas you have these other players, like to mention a guy like a T. Higgins, the rookie from the Bengals, or even Justin Jefferson, he sees so many targets down the field that offers him so much more upside. His ceiling is just significantly higher. So he could have one catch, but it could be for 50 yards, whereas Juju could have one catch for 5 yards. So I think that's really important to know how these players are being used in their respective offenses. So looking at average depth of target and seeing, okay, this guy's a vertical threat. Like, he has more upside. And also looking at how often are they targeted in the end zone. Again, touchdowns are the hardest thing to project for skill players on a week-to-week basis because they're so volatile. Touchdowns are pretty random. Can't really project them. But the one thing we can do is look at, okay, the more yardage player has, the more catches they have, the more likely they are to score. And obviously, if your player scores for fantasy, like, that's an immediate, okay, like, he's going to have a good fantasy day. Like, that's kind of like the way it kind of bails players out if they don't, get a lot of yardage or get a lot of catches. If they score a touchdown, then you're kind of bailed out in that situation. So I think that's important to look at the usage. And then ultimately, if usage looks similar, then you go with, okay, I know this player is more talented, because usually the talent and usage is cohesive and we see one follow the other. But again, rational coaching doesn't always happen.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't think there's I like that the thing you have to do, like you said, is just pick what you think your best chances to win after you do all that math. Because, like, you're not always going to be correct. Right. Because it is still, at the end of the day, Kenyon Drake, I don't know if you saw his tweet 2 weeks ago, is like, I don't know how people do this. I don't even know what's going to happen. Like, at the end of the day, you don't know for sure. But if you do the math and the science like you're doing, at least, you put in what you think is best, and you can live with yourself a little bit easier. And I think that's the biggest thing, is because nothing's worse than sitting a guy and you would have won if you played him. You would have won money. Like, that just those are the worst Tuesday mornings, I tell you what.
Yeah. And I think that's part and two is to just not always, tinker so much and, take the lumps with the highs and know that, especially at the receiver position specifically, this is where you get burned the most, is at wide receiver, because it's such a tough position, because the receiver position is dependent on another player. Like, if they don't throw him the ball, then they can't score fantasy points. So and that's no one's fault in any way, shape, or form. It's just, okay, you didn't get targeted. Like, what do you do? If this happened, I think it was like week 4 where Brandon Cooks had 0. He just had 0 targets, 0 catches, a goose egg. Everybody dropped him. And then he's just gone on an absolute tear ever since that game. And it's just like, why that happens? Like, look, you got to look at more like the peripheral metrics and be like, okay, so I can kind of ask why. Like, why did he get 0 targets? Well, he ran all the routes. He was playing all the snaps. This game really sticks out more like an outlier. So like, let's not like bury this guy because he had one game where he just kind of didn't do anything. That happens. And I think a perfect example, I guess I'll call my shot now here is Jerry Jeudy. So Jerry Judy's coming off a game with 15 targets and 5 drops. And a lot of people are going to bury him because of the drops and the production wasn't there. But what I see is the opportunity. Like, they're going to give him the ball. They're feeding him the ball. And Jerry Jeudy had 5 drops his entire college career in 2019 at Alabama. Like, it's such an outlier performance that for me to just, I'm going to give up on Jerry Jeudy. Like, I really want to play Jerry Jeudy. So whether I'm playing it in like DraftKings, a DFS format, Jerry Jeudy's a player I really want to play this week because the opportunities are going to be there for him. And I believe that he is a good player when he has the ball in his hands. So you can't just bury players because they have one bad game or 2. Again, if it's like 5 bad games, okay, like you mentioned, you got to get off the bandwagon. But, after one play, you got to look at the other metrics and figure out, ask yourself why this player failed as opposed to, hey, this player just sucks. Because most of the time, that's not always the case.
Yeah, like on my team, I had Tyreek Hill this week, and there was one game where he got me 40 plus fantasy points. And this week he got me like 5. I'm not gonna be like, oh no, I'm gonna drop Tyreek Hill. Why would you do that? Like, one of the best receivers in the game, you wouldn't do that. But he was just coverage. You got to look at the coverage. You got to look at how you look at the Vikings. I mean, Justin Jefferson was guarded. Adam Thielen was guarded. I think this last game or 2 games ago, Conklin was getting thrown the ball all the time. And you're like, wait, where is Conklin? Well, Kyle Rudolph's out. So, of course, he's going to get more pitches. Irv Smith Jr. is going to get more of that action. So you kind of got to look at those kinds of things, like injuries-wise, coverage-wise, all of these things. Who's going to step up, especially in this week, too. If you are in the week 17 fantasy for Vikings, at least, I don't know why, if it wouldn't mean anything, but Dalvin Cook isn't playing because his dad passed away unexpectedly. So maybe you'll see probably more Alexander Madison, more Boone, more of those kinds of things, especially. But that sucks for your I mean, not really, because it doesn't really matter because we're out in the playoffs. So what do these games mean anyways? But those are the things I would agree with you. It just, not everyone's going to be perfect in lightning. So kind of looking at the Vikings and the Pats, we're going to go a little bit forward. We're looking now, obviously we're both eliminated, as I've said. What are you guys looking for, maybe even in the draft? I know this is a little far away. We still got a whole Super Bowl and season to get through, but now kind of looking towards the beginning of everything. Jags nab the first round draft pick, Jets might get the second. What are you guys looking for in your teams, and even my teams, I'll tell you, in this next draft?
Well, the Patriots need a lot of help across the board. So what I'll say about the New England Patriots, again, they'll probably get mocked quarterbacks in a lot of, mock drafts. I mean, I don't think it's a bad option for sure, especially with a solid crop of quarterbacks coming out. I know that the kid from Alabama is a popular option because it looks like he could potentially fall into the mid first round, as opposed to obviously, Fields and the kid from BYU are probably going to go after. It's probably in the top 10 somewhere. So unless the Patriots want to pay up, they'll probably end up trading down, which is what they always do, which sucks, but they need a lot of help, and they can actually fill a lot of pieces through the free agency because they're going to have a ton of cap space next year. I fully expect them to sign Hunter Henry to just like a massive tight end deal, because the tight end position for them has been so bad the last 2 years, basically ever since Gronk retired and then came back. They just haven't had 0 production from the tight end position, and they can't, drafting a tight end doesn't do anything because tight ends need time to develop. So they need to sign a tight end in free agency. So I don't expect them to address the position in the NFL draft. Offensive line, they're still pretty good. Running back, they're pretty good. I guess they might want to bolster up the defensive line, pass rush. They really have never been a team that has had a lot of pass rush. They never paid pass rushers, but again, this defensive line, the front seven, needs a lot of help. They've had a lot of trouble against the run this year in certain games. Secondary is pretty strong, even though they're going to probably lose Gilmore. J.C. Jackson's been good in spots. Jonathan Jones has been good in spots. So, yeah, I think it's really about the defensive front. Either, not a linebacker. You can't take a linebacker in the first round. You can. It's just not like
Unheard of.
Yeah, it's not something I would want them to do because linebacker is a more replaceable position, and they're going to get Hightower back as well. So I don't think they need to draft linebackers. They would say pass rush and then quarterback, and I guess wide receiver too. Look, the N'Keal Harry experiment has just not worked. The guy just can't separate. He's had all the opportunity really this year, especially to kind of step up. Edelman's been hurt, but if they draft a wide receiver at pick 15, I'm totally fine for that. That's as a fantasy player, someone that, could get hyped up about a new receiver because this is a really strong receiver class for a second straight year. Yeah, I'm all about them drafting a wide receiver.
I don't trust Bill Belichick actually drafting a receiver because he's missed so much. I don't think he's drafted a Pro Bowl receiver. I think on Monday night they showed that. I think we should take a receiver, but I just don't have much trust in Bill's drafting strategy right now. I like Hunter Henry. I do like that a lot. I hope we get him. Maybe Jimmy G back, reunion, and Carson Wentz. I don't see us really taking a quarterback yet. I don't know how long Bill has left. And I know he wants to – he's excited for this. Like, okay, this is his team now. Like, he can make a footprint without Brady. I think he's competitively is okay with that. But I don't know if he's ready to start a project at quarterback. So I honestly think it's going to be like we did the last 10 years. We're going to trade back probably something like that. And then take a safety from a deep Division 3. And so honestly, that's what I come up with is I have a plan like I would like, but Bill has his own thing. Like when he traded back last year, I thought we were taking Cole Kmet. I'm like, all right, the tight end class isn't that great to take a tight end in the first round. I thought we were going to take that. Me personally, I wouldn't mind a receiver like you said if we hit the right one, because Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham, they're not good, but they also don't have much help. Like they have all this time in the world because of their offensive line is really good, but the receivers are still not getting separation. And they need that dog if you don't have a star quarterback that can, like Brady. If you don't have a star quarterback, you need to surround him with something. Like Kirk Cousins, man, going to Marissa, what you want to do with the Vikings. He's got it made with all his weapons.
It just sucks because, like, I'm on, my mom does this. I don't know why, but now I'm getting blown up for Viking stuff. But we're on, like, a Facebook page where all these Vikings just, like, go and talk shit, basically. And they're just like hounding Kirk, and I am so torn because I feel like he's robbing us, but I also feel like he's not doing as bad as everyone thinks, and I think he gets a little more credit, but at the same time, he's still not doing the best that he could do. A lot of people want Trey Lance, NDSU boy, Marshall, Minnesota boy. I've talked about him on the pod before. I've seen what he can do up front. He was in the same conference with me with high school. So I know what he can do, but I don't know if it's the smart move and I don't know if it's the right move. I think we need to work on our defense. We need to work on our secondary. We need to work on our special teams, our offensive line. I think the reason why maybe Kirk isn't doing so well is because he doesn't have any time. I mean, you look at all of these guys. You look at Aaron Rodgers. You look at – goodness, that was something just fell. My gosh, my dog freaked out. But, you look at all of these receivers or – I don't even know. I was on a roll, guys, and my dog just ruined it. But I think that there's so much more that needs to be done because Kirk doesn't have the time that he can to make the plays that he needs to do. Because you have Aaron Rodgers who sits back there all day, Drew Brees, all of these people. And I think that if you get more time, then that'll be good. But I don't know. I just don't think that we need that. I think we need to work on our special teams and we need to work on our defense. Because as Mike Zimmer has said, this is the worst defense I have seen in like over 40 years or my entire coaching. Well, you're the defensive-minded coach. Isn't that ultimately on you? So that's, I think, the biggest thing that we need to work on is we need to go, cornerbacks. We need to go safeties. We need to go all of this, offensive linemen, just special teams too. Someone who can catch a punt return and run with it and not have it fall through. Bless Chad Beatty's heart. That's not his role. Shouldn't be his role. he's so much better of a wide receiver. I love what he does. I love the kid, but that's not his role to do. And I think, once we get then to, Anthony Barr back and all of or Kendrick's back and, all of these, Danielle Hunter, then maybe our defense will be better. But right now, it's just those are the gaps we need to fill, I think, as a Vikings fan.
Yeah, I think too, the name is escaping me, but I believe the Vikings signed a pretty significant defensive tackle this offseason. I believe
Michael
it's from,
Pierce, yeah.
yeah, and he opted out. So they were expecting have this guy to help plug up the holes, help stop Alvin Kamara from scoring 6 touchdowns. But I mean, he hasn't been there all season. So I totally expect the Vikings defense to just bounce back, just kind of because of natural, progression from some of these players. Now, you mentioned the secondary, Cameron Dantzler. Yes, he was absolutely atrocious to start the season, but ever since he came back from his injury, he's been much, much better. He's been locking down some of the better wide receivers in the NFL. His PFF coverage grade over the, basically since he's come back is in the top 5 among cornerbacks. So I think it's a really bright future for him, especially from a guy who PFF liked a lot coming out, even though his 40 time was really weird. It was really bad, but he's a player that's been, really underrated, I think, as a rookie so far this year. So I think that the Vikings defense is going to be way better. Like you said, Mike Zimmer has said this is the worst defense he's had. And yeah, it's true. But because they had a lot of turnover, last year at the beginning of this year, they got rid of all the veterans, the Xavier Rhodes. They tried to get Ndakwe and then that didn't work. And then they moved on from him. So I expect their defense to be a lot better just naturally, but anything to help, increase the pass rush for sure. So if they go after a pass rusher in the first round, that makes a lot of sense. And then obviously helping protect Kirk, in the offensive line makes sense too.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of holes that we need to fix. As a Vikings fan, it's just been so hard this year because, of who you have on offense. You look at our team, and it's Dalvin Cook, one of the best runners in the league. You've got Justin Jefferson, who's hopefully going to become the rookie of the year this year. I mean, you've got all Adam Thielen, even, Rudolph, all of these different components that our offense is amazing. But obviously, Kirk can't do his job because our O-line I think our O-line's always been bad. I don't remember a time where I've been yeah, you protected our quarterback. I've been going to games since I was 7. I feel like I never, in the last couple of years, but I think definitely we need to do something because I'm so sad of yelling at the TV and with my family just being this is utter disappointment every single year. So we're going to go on now. I'm going to toss it to Brock. He's going to take over this bad boy because he knows about this game and does well. The over under segment for the show. Brock, please take it away.
Yeah, I created this last week and I got so much buzz and Steph liked it so much. And then I beat her, which made it more fun for me as well. So we're gonna make this a thing now. So each and every week we have a guest on. We're gonna play over, under. Mercer, are you gonna get on this action or is it just gonna be a
I can try my best. I mean, might as well. I gotta do it. Let's go.
You want in it? Okay. So Andrew, there's going to be 10 items: 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 receivers, and a kicker. Because as Vikings fans and Marissa know that a kicker does matter. I think the Chargers would say that too. So we're going to pick over under on 10 different players. Let's start it off with possibly the MVP this year. He's the favorite now, Aaron Rodgers. He throws a lot of touchdowns, but we're not going to go over under touchdowns against the Bears. We're going to go yardage, which he doesn't throw for much yards for sure as Patrick Mahomes. He averages only 270. He's playing the Chicago Bears in a game that they need to win to get the 1 seed. Over under 259 yards passing. Let's start with Andrew. What do you got over under?
I'm going to take the over. Aaron Rodgers, too good. He's out for blood this season. He's got to get that. He's got to lock in the MVP. So I'm gonna go with the over for Aaron Rodgers, 259 yards.
Marissa, do you need more time to think, or do you want me to go? Marissa likes to take her time.
I do like to take my time, but it pains me to say this, but I do have to agree with Andrew. He's Aaron Rodgers is in the F everyone mood, and he's doing so good right now. It literally, he's just you doubted me with Jordan Love, F you guys, I'm gonna make you regret it, And he's showing that he against the Titans, he made them look like nothing. So I'm definitely going with the over on this. I think he's going to get more than 259 yards.
Okay, I'm gonna just take the under because I just want to be a rebel, I guess. I was probably gonna take the over, but that's not fun anymore. I'm gonna take the under. Maybe they have a huge lead like they did last time. They have to run out the clock, but I do think it's actually gonna be close. And if I play Mitch Trubisky, I obviously hope it's the over, so they get a shootout, that type thing going here. But the Bears defense, they need to win just as much as the Packers. Well, not as much as the Packers do because the Packers got it, but they obviously, if the Bears don't win, they're not automatically in the playoffs. So I think they could maybe slow down Rodgers a little bit. Divisional games, they seem to never be the same, right? I don't know if you have a statistic, Andrew, but how often is when you play a divisional game, two teams twice, the game's the exact same? Usually they make some type of adjustment that maybe the Bears can actually make it a little bit close.
Usually the trend is divisional game rematches are usually kind of lean towards the under in terms of, projected totals. We see more unders, but usually with players usually, if one player does really well against a divisional opponent or does really bad against a divisional opponent, that's a trend that I've always noticed that seems kind of sticky. And that's like over years, because I've always tried to look at, how does he play against this team or this team? And most of the time, it's a totally different team or it's different defensive coordinator. Like, how is this relevant? But I have found in the past that specifically with divisional opponents, that player statistics does kind of carry some weight in rematches. And like you said, Aaron Rodgers actually in the last game he played the Bears, he only threw for 211 yards. So I'm already feeling shaky about my over pick.
He just doesn't throw for much yards. He just gets touchdowns. I think Aaron Jones fans that are high on him, he did good at the beginning. He's still a good running back, but they got to be like, he's the one getting him down there. And then it's a touchdown over the top to Devontae Adams. And
Is it too late for me to change my answer?
You're so wishy-washy. I love it. You're like, I'm in. I'm kidding. You just like talk yourself out of it.
Well, like first I go with like, oh, I got to take the over because I just feel like I'm falling for the trick. It's Aaron Rodgers MVP. You got to take the over. But when you look at the math, it's like, yeah, well, maybe you probably shouldn't. Like, doesn't make, I'm going under. Changing my answer.
Under? Okay. You're following me.
Write it down.
Okay. So Marissa's the only one over. All right. The second one, who is a dark horse MVP. I think it's too late for him, but he's having a hell of a year up in Buffalo. Josh Allen. I'll start with this one. 2.5 touchdowns or more, over under. He's had 4 touchdowns back-to-back games. His first game against the Dolphins, he got 4 touchdowns as well. I'm going to say under. I think I still think they're going to play most of the game. But Xavier Howard, I don't know how much he played that first game. He was just getting back in the system. I like this Dolphins defense a lot. I still think the Bills win this game, but I'm going to take the under for Josh Allen. He has to slow down at some point, doesn't he?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, he's going to be an interesting guy to talk about next year with fantasy football drafts because his completion percentage has just gone nuclear from where it was. He was sub 60% his first 2 seasons, and now he's up to like 69%, at the top of the league. So, the league average is more around 65%. So it'll be interesting to see if his just natural regression kind of kicks in, he falls a little bit. But for this matchup, again, like I talked about at the beginning, I don't anticipate the Bills, going all out in this game. So I'm going to take the under for Josh Allen.
Marissa?
Yeah, this one's hard because it is the Bills and it is the Dolphins. And you look at like the Dolphins, how great of a game they had last week. Same with the Buffalo Bills. I think this is going to be a really close game. I'm going to take the under on this one just because I think it's going to be kind of a battle. And I don't think that Josh Allen is going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to go off.
Sweet.
Okay. Oh, I already said under, so we're all under on that one. So I guess that's not fun. No one's going to really care about that one. But that's all right. We're being honest here. Last quarterback, how about the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton? He scored 2 touchdowns or more in 5 of the last 6 games, but the Giants is actually kind of a steep test against quarterbacks. They only gave up about 20 touchdowns now. I think last week we had the same thing with Lamar Jackson. It was over under 2.5, and the under actually won. Me and Steph both got that one wrong. How about Andy Dalton, the 1.5 touchdowns over under at the Giants? Let's start with Marissa.
This is 1.5. I'm gonna go over on this one just because it is the Giants, like we talked about earlier, and I do like Dallas and what they're doing.
All right, Andrew, what do you got?
What the line is? How many touchdowns is it?
1.5.
1.5. Oh, that's too easy for the red rifle. I'll take the over.
I was like thinking about it, like, yes, give me the over.
His receivers are playing really well right now. Gallup is doing stuff. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of finally already starting to happen where, we thought this would happen when Dalton first got to the team. It's like, all right, well, he just has to distribute the ball to Gallup, to Cooper, to Lamb, and it'll be all set. It just took way longer than we thought for it to happen, and it's starting to actually happen. So, yeah, I think that with his receiving core, I think he can get 2 touchdowns.
I'm gonna say the under in the locking ups at the end. I'm gonna pick the Giants. So I think the Giants defense is for real. I think you wrote an article or someone on Pro Football that they like Zeke Elliott. I think maybe he might steal a touchdown. I probably think the Cowboys only score maybe 2 touchdowns in this one. So I'm gonna take the under on Andy Dalton. So that's it for the quarterbacks. Let's go on with the running backs. With the player that scored 6 touchdowns last week, Alvin Kamara. Going against the Panthers this week, over or under 1.5 touchdowns. Start with you, Andrew.
It's weird because you never want to fade a guy that's just scored 6 touchdowns, but I'm going to take the under. Alvin Kamara is not really a touchdown guy. He doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, and again, obviously scored 6 last week. So, but that doesn't mean he's going to score 6 again, or even means he's going to score 1 again. I mentioned before, touchdowns are really fluky week to week, and that's why you never see players score 6 touchdowns in one game. And look, he's really involved in the passing game, but Latavius Murray also kind of works in near the goal line as well. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Latavius Murray score a touchdown, or even Taysom Hill, potentially steal another touchdown. So for me, I'm going to take the under on Alvin Kamara. Touchdowns, because he'll probably get like 100 yards, but touchdowns will go under.
Marissa?
No, I'm going over. I disagree. He did so good against the Vikings, and I don't think that against Carolina Panthers defense that he's going to do not the same thing, especially with Michael Thomas still being out. And, all of these still components. I mean, he was on fire against obviously one of the worst defenses in the league, but I gotta have faith in him that he's going to go more than 1.5 touchdowns.
So you're taking the over?
Yep.
I'll take the over as well. I think the thing that the Saints might limit him a little bit because they already got a playoff spot. Obviously, they don't want to win, but they're much better offensively, obviously, with Alvin Kamara. But I still think he finds it twice. So I'll take the over. Sticking the team that the Vikings are facing this week is the Lions. So that brings us DeAndre Swift. Same question. 1.5 touchdowns over under DeAndre Swift. Do you think he has the same? Obviously, he's not going to score 6, but do you think he can score 2? I'll start with this one. I'm going to take the over on this one as well. Ben Lieber pretty much said it on KFan last week. The Vikings are pretty much playing small ball like in the NBA with their defensive line. Andrew alluded to it. Michael Pierce was the guy that was supposed to fill up the middle for Linval Joseph. That run defense is very small up front, and then you don't have Eric Kendricks again. I like DeAndre Swift to get in the end zone twice this week.
I will take the under again on another running back. And again, it's not to say that Swift can't put up a lot of yards, but look, man, I don't know if it's going to be Stafford under center or Chase Daniel. Like this offense with Chase Daniel was Cam Newton-esque on last Saturday. Looking at a metric we use at PFF called EPA, expected points added, looking at it per play, and basically kind of just like accumulates, how good the offense was from, creating points basically as the value scale. And it was at like negative 0.5, which is just absolutely atrocious with basically it was basically the same as Cam Newton versus the Rams. So that's the type of offense they could potentially running with Chase Daniel. And if Stafford's banged up, 50-50 shot he plays, I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith that the Lions are going to be able to put up a lot of points in this game. And I know that the projected total is 54.5 points. But we saw last week the Buccaneers almost cover that by themselves. And I'm afraid that it could be another scenario where the Vikings just do that themselves this week.
This one is hard for me, but I think that this defense is so bad. And I think that our run defense is just like atrocious. Obviously, Kamara got 6, almost 7, which he should have got 7. I don't even know why they didn't put him in for that. But the run defense is just awful. And I think that if it's awful against the Saints, it's going to be awful against the Lions. And I know that, you're iffy on the quarterbacks, but all you got to do is hand off the ball. So I feel like they might be running even more because you're not going to be relying on throwing the ball so much because you got a bad QB. You're going to throw the ball, get interception, maybe even going to get Stansler. I know, like you mentioned him being on the up and up. So I'm going to take the over on this one for DeAndre Swift and getting more than 1.5 touchdowns.
I don't know if we're smart, Marissa, going against the PFF guy on the back-to-back, but we'll see how.
It's going to be bad because Andrew's probably going to win this, and then he's going to be like, this is my job. Like, I do this on the daily.
Okay, last running back, David Montgomery, over under 99.5 yards rushing. Will he rush for 100 yards this week? Let's start with Marissa this time.
I'm going to take the under on this one. I don't think Montgomery's going to rush. No, I don't think so. I'm not confident in it. So I'm going to take the under on this one.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'm going to take the under here as well. Again, obviously I hate running backs. That's kind of what what I've been dishing out here today is I hate all running backs. I just think that the game script doesn't really cater to Montgomery being involved in the rushing game that much. I think he can get there from I still think he's a decent fantasy play because he's involved in the passing game, but you look at these two teams, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers are the number one team in terms of scoring points in the first half. They are going to put up points to start this game, and the Bears are more likely than not going to have to play catch up, which doesn't necessarily mean, okay, we can just feed Dave Montgomery 20, 25 carries a game. They're going to probably have to throw it a little bit more, which is why I like Allen Robinson a lot. I think that Trubisky's arm is going to do a little bit more damage in this game. So I don't know if we're going to see David Montgomery hit 100 rushing or near 100 rushing yards.
I guess I'm just a positive guy. I'm going to take the over again on all of these running back ones. David Montgomery, first time he played the Packers when they got blown out, he actually had 11 carries for 103 yards. He's had over 100 yards rushing 3 of the last 5. I think this game's going to be a little bit closer. I think obviously the Bears need to win the toss and receive. Usually you want to defer, but like you said, Andrew, holy cow. The Packers, they're going to score the first time they have the ball. I'd rather take the ball away. Like, I think Bill started that against Peyton Manning to start taking the ball. When you go against Peyton Manning, you never wanted him to start with the ball and be down 7 points. So honestly, maybe the coin flip is a big deal here Sunday between the Bears and Packers. I'm probably just making something bigger than it is. But anyway, I'm going to take over on that. So that's it on the running backs. Looks like me and Andrew are opposites there. Let's see if we're any similar with the wide receivers. Andrew talked about how bad that Texans pass defense is. That leads us to A.J. Brown, over under 89 yards receiving for A.J. Brown. Andrew.
Yeah, I'm probably going to take the over on what's the line again?
89 yards.
89. Yeah, I'm going to take the over on it. So PFF has this really cool tool. It's a wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, which lets you look at, potential wide receivers or the cornerbacks they're going to face. And again, this isn't something, it's kind of like a strength of schedule thing where it's not the be all tell all, like, oh, he's playing this cornerback. Receivers move around the formation so much and cornerbacks play zone, play man, it changes. But what I can guarantee you is that at some point in this game, A.J. Brown is going to get matched up against Vernon Hargraves, who has been by far one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL this season. Part of the reason why the Texans defense has been so bad. A.J. Brown is one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. He's one of the top leaders in terms of yards per route run, which is something PFF really talks about as a great statistic for future production for the wide receiver position. A.J. Brown could honestly have 2 catches for 89 yards in this game. Would not surprise me in the fewest that would happen. So I'll take the over with A.J. Brown.
How about you, Marissa?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Andrew on this one. I'm gonna take the over as well. Plain simple.
I'm not going to disagree on Andrew on this one. Over in my bold prediction is AJ Brown's receiver one this week in fantasy. I think, like you said, he could. I think he could have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I think sky's the limit for him this week. As a Patriots fan, when we played the Texans decided to put like 5 down linemen and just stop the run. I think they might try to do that and be like, okay, Derrick Henry's not going to beat us one-on-one coverage, AJ Brown, and I think he could have a big day. Okay.
Oh God,
Stephon Diggs.
I wish AJ Brown was on the Patriots. I wish AJ Brown was on the Patriots when they drafted Harry instead of AJ Brown. I was actually at the draft, right, in Nashville when this happened.
Oh, no way.
And
Wow.
the Patriots were on the clock and AJ Brown was available, and I was like, okay, like this is it, like this is the pick. And then they took N'Keal Harry, and I was like, oh, like come on. And like at the time, I was like, okay, like maybe it's not that bad. And then AJ Brown went a couple picks later, and now we're 2 years later, and now it looks awful. So, yeah,
and we took Harry over Debo and DK as well, so that wasn't good either. That's why I said, real quick, what receiver would you draft then if you're the Patriots? Because I don't trust Bill. Who would you? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to take a receiver, but if you're the Patriots, let's say we have the 13th pick. Real quick, who's that receiver? Probably not Smith or Chase. Who is it?
Ah, man, we can't get Chase.
You think he's going to be there? Because we probably won't trade up.
Probably not. He probably won't be there. I mean, I like the kid from Purdue, Rondale Moore. I like him a lot too. So again, I think it's just a matter of if Belichick can't draft receivers, so you just got to start, throwing them at the board. Just take a bunch of them. Okay. Like you got to hit on one guy, like just take 3 and just hope that one of them pans out.
Definitely. Well, we'll stay in the AFC East. Stephon Diggs leads the league in receptions, averages 8 a week. He had 8 receptions over 100 yards and a touchdown against the Dolphins the first time he played them. But he goes against Xavier Howard, who's a lot better. I think he is in week 2, over under 7.5 catches. I'm going to take the under because Andrew's making me think that they might not be playing full games. So I'm going to take the under on this one. How about you, Marissa?
I was just going to agree on that. I just think this is going to be, I even called it, said it was going to be a really close game and a tough game. Maybe not even a high scoring game. So for Diggs to, obviously he's going to do great against the Patriots. Sorry, guys. But, this, I don't think he's going to have an amazing game. So I'm going to take the under as well.
I will also go under here as well. Interesting thing I heard about Xavier Howard, again, really highly graded on PFF. I believe he's PFF's highest graded cornerback this season. So he's been locking down wide receivers. And the interesting thing he said on the Chris Collinsworth podcast, shout out to my boss at PFF, Chris Collinsworth. So Xavier Howard was on his podcast and he mentioned that he remembers when receivers do damage on him. Like he specifically remembers when certain players beat him. And even in this last game against the Chiefs that he played, or it was 2 weeks ago when the Dolphins played the Chiefs, he literally recalled Sammy Watkins back from his days playing in Buffalo. Like when Sammy Watkins had beat him on a route and he remembered it playing it 2 weeks ago. So he remembers all the catches that Diggs had in that game. So I think that Howard's going to be able to lock him down. And again, also factoring in the I don't know if Diggs plays the entire game. So I'll take the under for sure.
Okay. And the last receiver, let's see if so far the 2 receivers we all agree on. So it's the wash. Hollywood Brown over under 0.5 touchdowns. So pretty much, does Hollywood Brown score a touchdown this week? I think Marissa, you start this one.
I'm gonna go under on this one. I just don't have any faith.
You don't think it's score?
No, I don't know. I don't like him.
Fair enough.
I just don't like what he does, and I think that he's just not a good fit. And I'm going under. Absolutely.
All right. I'll go, and then Andrew can end it. I'm going to say he scored 4 in the last 5 weeks. Going against the Bengals, the Bengals actually have given up some yards to Brandon Cooks last week, but I just don't trust the passing game of the Ravens. I think that's just betting too much on him scoring. I'm going to say the under as well. How about you, Andrew? Do you think he's going to score?
No, I'm probably going to take the under here as well. He did score last time he played the Bengals, so he actually had a decent game against the Bengals. But the Bengals have a pretty decent corner, William Jackson the third. He's pretty decent. He's been able to hold his own against some of the better wide receivers in the NFL. And I think you nailed it, Brock, when you're saying the passing game for the Ravens. Look, it's pretty concentrated between Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown, but there's a chance that they don't really need to push the envelope in this matchup. Brandon Allen could turn the ball over. They could have short field. They might be able to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So this isn't really a blow-up spot for Marquise Brown necessarily. This isn't going to be a shootout. So I don't think he'll find the end zone.
All right, last one is the kicker. Last week, I barely won. It was 1.5 over under. Dan Bailey missed kicks, and Dan Bailey missed one right after right before halftime or whatever on an extra point. And then I thought I was going to lose it because they should have went for 2 at the end of the game, at the end when they're down, and they kicked it again, but he made it. Oh, that was scary. Robbie Gould, I think, is he the highest paid kicker? I know he just got a 2-year extension, but he missed 2 last week.
Yeah.
Going against the Seahawks, over under -0.5. So does Robbie Gould miss a kick this? It can be an extra point or a field goal. You start, Andrew. Does he miss a kick this week, Robbie Gould?
I'm going to say no. He was on one of my fantasy teams, and he actually was on my team last week. And again, he sucked. So, I want to say I just want to bury the guy, but I've talked about this on this already. You can't just bury these players after one bad game. They paid him. They believe in him. So I'm as good as gold. Over.
Oh.
Or he's not going to miss a kick or whatever.
Okay, no problem. Marissa?
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing as like Dan Bailey. Like he had a couple really bad games, or one awful one. And then
Marissa, are you by your speaker? Can you hear good, Andrew?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
Oh, do I need to shout?
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Maybe I needed to shout, but I was saying Dan Bailey, he had a really bad game the week. He missed so many points against the Buccaneers. Then he came back and kind of redeemed himself. I think this is the same thing with Robbie Gould. So I'm going under on this one. Just because I think, kickers make mistakes and people make mistakes, but like Andrew said, it's like you can't bury the guy who probably will come back, hopefully, eventually.
I'm going to say he misses a kick then this week. Given that contract, I think he's more safe, but you just never trust a kicker on one kick. It's just one kick, like 1.5 last week. I think he's going to miss a kick this week, so I'll take the under. And that's it for the over-under. Looks like we differed on all running backs, kicker, and quarterback. The receivers doesn't really matter because we agreed on all of them. That's why we do multiple to make it more fun. So that'll be fun to watch out for this week.
Wonderful. We got one.
Go ahead.
One more segment. We got to end with it. This is the one more. I know it's a little bit longer of an episode, but I'm just having too much fun. We do this thing where it's lock and upset. So we choose for this upcoming week which one we're going to choose. We're going to lock in, and then which one we're going to do upset. So for me, I'm going to take the lock, and it's going to be the Saints winning the game against the Carolina Panthers. And then I'm also going to take, now my upset is a big one, which you guys will hate, but I love. I like what they're doing lately for some odd reason. I'm going to take the Jets win over the Patriots. That's my upset.
That was going to be mine.
Ha! Beat you to it. Woo!
Oh man, I was actually afraid to look at the spread when those lines first came out because I honestly was not. I thought it might be a pick 'em. I was terrified to look. I was like, okay, they're favored by 3 points. Okay.
It's by it's like a hair, I'm like, I don't think so, but Pats aren't they're not looking like themselves. They're not looking good, and the Jets for some reason are like, let's win some random games at the end. What are you doing? So that's who I got. Well, Andrew won on the topic. You can go with the same one upset, or if you want to be different, go for it. Who do you got for your lock and upset?
No, I can't pick against my Pats against the Jets. Even if Bill Belichick can't actually play in the game, I just assume that his coaching can just somehow manage to beat Adam Gase, even if he's not even on the field. I will do for my lock. I'm going to take the Colts over the Jags. even though the Jags beat the Colts already this year. They're 14-point favorites at home, so I'm going to lock that in. Colts got to win to get in, so I will take that here. And I guess my sneaky upset will be the Texans beat the Tennessee Titans. Deshaun Watson comes out, lights up the defense, and JJ Watt, put the team on blast last week. The defense is going to show up, shut down everybody except AJ Brown. And yeah, Deshaun Watson is going to get the W.
I saw that video and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. It was like, I felt it in my soul. I also was like, I feel like the Vikings would say this too. Like, this is just like him just being pissed the F off. Brock, have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Oh my God. It was awesome.
I actually had the same lock with the Colts. They're not going to lose to the Jaguars twice, so I think that's a pretty easy lock. My upset is the G-Men. I think the Giants do pull off the upset against the Cowboys. They should have won the first time they played. It was like 37 or 34, but that's when Dak got hurt. I just think they're going to pull it off probably, and I hope they don't. I hope the Cowboys win and the Patriots lose, so we go up a draft slot. But I don't know. The Giants always do what I don't want them to do, so I think they'll pull off the upset this week.
Well, beautiful. Anybody else want to add anything before we get going and get out? Actually, you know what I want to, Andrew, thank you for joining us. You're welcome anytime if you want to talk fantasy, even next season, off season, who you got. I mean, this is what you do and you're good at it. So you're welcome anytime. Tune in, guys. This is going to be on obviously all the Spotify and Anchor and all of the good old stuff that is always on. Catch us on Twitter. Hopefully, we're going to be a little bit more active, doing some clips. Brock and I will get editing and doing those things tonight. And yeah, Brock, any last words? Andrew, anything you want to say?
I just thank Andrew for coming on. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm glad you reached out. I like just talking ball. It's fun meeting new people. So again, I don't go anywhere. I'm at home all the time. I'm in New England. It's cold out. I have really no incentive to leave my house. My groceries get delivered. I don't go outside. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So yeah, DMs are open. You want to talk ball? I'm always available.
Well, there we go. Oh, New England. That would make sense. Like Brock's in South Dakota and he's a Patriots fan, so I just feel like that's just so random. Like I'm in Minnesota, I'm a Minnesota fan. He's the one that's like outlier. Well, perfect. Let's hope all of our over-unders hit and everything else. And from all of us at ATP, thank you so much.